factor we take into account, and that is in terms of the amount of stock that is available, which can be produced or can be created again, or which cannot be created again. So there also we discussed that when we talk about in terms of whether it can be produced or it can be refilled or it can be replenished. Now that definition is also varies in terms of our the rate at which the replenishing process is happening. Okay, so when it is happening over thousands and millions of years of time, then there we consider that that stock on that resource or that bulk is a limited amount. Okay, so when we discussed about the definitions of renewable and non-renewable resources of energy, we can see one thing is clear, that this definition is framed in a way at the rate at which the resources are being replenished or they are being refilled again and again. Okay, but in today's context, when we talk about this definition, it's not just about the rate at which the nature is replenishing and refilling it. It is also in terms of about the regenerating or resource from that back. Okay? Because, say for example, even if the nature has the capacity to replenish some resource, okay, but if our rate of exploiting or using that resource is very high, then in that case, even when the nature is replenishing it, they won't be able to refill it in the time or by the time the stock is ready for our next use. So in that case, there will be a time when our rate of exploitation of that resource will exceed far greater than that of the rate of replenishment. In that case, there is likely possibility that in that case, of course, the time will come when there will be no stock and we have to wait for it to again get refilled and refilled or replenished. So in that case, also we have to change our definition of renewable and non-renewable resource of energy. Because when we talk about water as a resource or we talk about forest as resources, then of course, these are the resources which can be replenished. Okay, and their time of replenishment is very small period. So by the time I take them out, they are replenished back into the system or refilled back into the stock. But because of their overuse, overconsumption, high rate of exploitation, and our activities which has created which has affected the quality of these resources, with which they are no more, even if they are there, they are not available for the use. These resources may reach a point where we will find that we don't have any more reserve for the same. So in that case, even when that resource is renewable, it will appear or it will behave as a non-renewable resource for that period of time until that resource is again refilled or replenished. Okay, so this is what I was discussing about the renewable and non-renewable resources of energy. So today we will continue and we will discuss about land as a resources. What are the various uses for which we are using this land resource, and what are the problems we have created because of the overexploitation of the resource, and we will discuss about them. Okay, so I'm presenting my slides. Okay, so when we say or when we use this term land resource, what does it mean? So all those features and processes of the land that is in some way useful or is able to serve the needs of humans especially, we term it as a land resource. Okay. Now there are various aspects when we see or when we try to look into all those features and processes which are or which can fulfill the human needs. So those are the climatic factors. Those are, of course, can be in the form of geological formations. They are in the form of soil, the water, Okay. Now we may ask the question, okay, what has to do with the water? But we will see in the coming few slides that it is an important part. They both are integral part, and they are interdependent on each other, especially when it comes to hydrological cycle. Okay. Then, of course, are the artifactual elements of stable nature, and then they are vegetation and the biological features. Okay, vegetation like in terms of forests, and the biological features are like the animals and different species that are living in these vegetation that then serve as a source for the land resource. Okay, so so we can say we say that okay, that is a very valuable resource in that term because they are also providing the soil, and in that soil vegetation is growing in the form of forest, is in the form of agricultural production, from where we are getting food, fiber, wood, medicines, other materials, because this land resource comprises of the soil. So from soil, we are getting by mining activities, we are getting mud and minerals and soil for construction activities or building material, and and of course this is the base, uh, means in which the agricultural productivity is happening. So it's the medium, it's an indirect medium from where we are going to get the food. Okay. So apart from that, there are several other functions like they serve as a watershed. Now, what is watershed? So it's the entire region that is available for the rainfall to percolate down in the soil so that it becomes the part of the soil moisture content or it forms the part of groundwater table. That patch of land is termed as watershed. So say for example, if we take a piece of land that is covered by tiles or it is completely or it is covered by a cement, then in that case that piece of land won't be called as watershed because it will no more allow the water to stand and percolate down the soil. Okay, so land of course serves as a watershed. Now land also serves as a dustbin. Now that is of course a sarcasm because it's a place where we are dumping our waste. Okay, this is a place that is providing the building material and it is the base for our means it's a base where we are able to stand because we cannot stand on water. So it's the land which is providing that stable surface over which we are able to stand. We are able to create buildings, we are able to build our houses, we are able to carry on the constructive activities and infrastructural activities like buildings and your industries, etc. So in this way, the land becomes a very useful source, a very valuable source in terms of providing the and fulfilling our requirements. Okay. So how to understand and how to learn or how to to store this in our head that okay, what are the possible uses of land as a resource because they are huge, they are in huge number. Okay, so the easier way is to broadly categorize based on the different purposes for which the land is being used. Okay, so on that basis, it can be a arable land, that is the land that is cultivable, it is fertile, and it is available for the agricultural activity. The second comprises of the pastures and meadows. Now they comprises of the vegetation cover in the form of grasslands, and they provide a huge source for food and fodder for cattle and for different producer levels organisms. Okay. The third comes the forest land. Okay, of course, forests and all the trees and plants are growing in uh, just excuse me for a second, Vida. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So we were talking about the forest land and the urban land. Of course, this whole city, that is the buildings, the agricultural land, they are all standing on this earth, on land. Okay. And then there is a land that is available for several non-agricultural practices. For example, we are creating artificial ponds for raising fishes. So that becomes an fish raising or artificial fishery, fish production, for producing fishes. Okay, and um, um, and then the piece of land can be used for raising gardens, for raising some park, etc. So those are all your non-agricultural land where they are using land for purposes other than the agricultural, for pasture, for forest, or for urban utilizations. Okay. So now various activities that are also associated with economic growth have led to several environmental problems. Okay. And what are these activities? Of course, waste disposal, that should be on our tip, because we are using land not not just for obtaining the resources in the form of food and in the form of minerals, but we are also using that same land for dumping our waste. Okay. Now, waste disposal, the pollutant discharge, one or the more closer things. And of course, we are consuming the land resource on daily basis at a very high rate. Say, for example, we are conducting mining activities so that minerals can be obtained. We are cultivating the area or cultivating the land more and more, so that more and more amount of agricultural, so that more and more amount of food production um, can be done. Okay. Now, we have also disturbed the ecological cycles, as a result of which we will see that it will affect the land in terms of the in terms of erratic rainfall, as a result of which the moisture content of the soil is going down, with which the we will see that how it has led to the led to the decline in the quality of the soil, as well as in decline in the moisture content of the soil. Okay. So the most important thing that is happening right now is change in land use pattern. Now, what does it mean? What does this signifies when we say that it's change in land use pattern? It implies that when we have a particular piece of land, we know, okay, this much amount or this much percent of area has to be devoted for this purpose. This much percentage of area should be devoted for land, for forest. This much area of land should be devoted for agricultural purposes, and so on. Okay. So that a balance is maintained. So on one hand, the land is able to recharge with has a sufficient area for providing the watershed for the water to percolate down, and on the other hand, it also has that amount of land where the sufficient amount of food production can happen. So it should be in a balanced way. Now, when I say changes in these patterns, what is happening is, so for example, as the population is increasing, more food production has to be done. Now, for that, more amount of agricultural land has to be taken, and for that, we are now clearing the forest land. So, what is happening? That amount of ratio, percentage amount of forest that should have been there in that land, it's now going down, okay, because it's been replaced by deforestation process, or cutting down of the trees, because we need it more for the agricultural purposes. Okay. So, can anyone tell what is the minimum requirement, or what is the requirement for any piece of land for the forest cover, or piece of land? I mean to say, for any nation, what is the prescribed percentage for it to be covered with forest? It to be forested. Anyone? I hope you understood my question, Vida. Have you understood my question? Anyone? बेटा मेरा question समझ में आया? What have I said? what I have said here, what I am trying to ask. Hello, hello. Am I audible? Am I audible? Okay, wait. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Oh,
Yes,
fine.
ma'am.
Okay, I'm fine. Okay, fine. Yeah, it's okay, Janvi. I can repeat the question because I was wondering, nobody is responding. Is my voice audible? Or is there, again, there is a network issue? Okay, I was asking the question that can anyone tell what is the prescribed amount that is necessary for a country to be covered by forest? कितना परसेंटेज होना चाहिए लैंड का फॉरेस्ट से कवर होने के लिए किसी भी कंट्री के लिए what is that percentage or that area? Okay, I'm amazed. It's an easy question. Okay, thank you, Kiran. It's not exactly 30%. It should be approximately one third of the total area, so that makes around 33%. Okay, so one third of the total area of our nation should be covered with forest land. Okay, and now can anyone tell what is the current forest cover of our country? Okay, right. Neha says it's 24%. It's not exactly 24%, it's around 22% or somewhere around 21 point something percent. Okay. So currently our means India has this much percentage of land that is covered with forest. So in order to reach that benchmark, there is still a gap of around 11 to 12%. Okay, which is of course huge because USA has already crossed its benchmark, and the tree cover or the forest cover there is around 35% of the entire area, okay, which is huge. Okay, so one of the main reason why this means why we are not able to expand our forest cover is, is not just in terms of that there is no dedication or there is no such ambition of doing it. The one of the main problem is because the land is now not available, because if we have to increase the forest cover, then it also implies that the part of land has to be taken from the agricultural area, and that is actually not happening. So if you can recall your last journey by train or by road, okay, maybe you can think of what you saw beside those railway track if you were not in mountainous regions. Of course, they were huge expansions of agricultural and arable lands. Okay, so it's because the population of our country is so large that in order to support this much amount of population with food productivity, huge amount of agricultural land is needed. And for that, more and more forest lands are being cleared so that they can be used for the same. Okay, and then also as the urban areas expanding, I think if in few decades, means in last few decades, I remember when I last went to Delhi when I was a child in 2004. I remember that the Gurgaon area, and they were like completely occupied with these forest areas, especially the Aravali forest areas. Okay, and now when I was traveling, means by air, I can see that the forests now are being replaced by the forests of buildings, the huge buildings. I can see some जैसे ब्रोकली होता है ना, छोटा छोटा उस तरीके का बीच बीच में कहीं छुटका मोटका पेड़ दिख रहा था. Okay, so we can see this change is huge. Okay, and this agricultural land or this land has also been used for urban expansions because people have to live, they want houses, and where will they live? Okay, so for that, they are being expanded. Okay, for houses, for residential purpose, for industrial growth, then they will live. जब एक बार घर मिल जाता है तो फिर हम दूसरी चीजों की तरफ देखने लगते हैं. For example, we also need markets, we need places for recreation. So in that demand, we grow we come up with the malls and the market areas, and so on. Okay. 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 So, what are the negative impacts as a result of the use of this biochar is, or this usages? Okay. It has disrupted the water cycle. Okay. Now, the question comes, how is it going to, means how the deterioration or the changes in the land use pattern is affecting the water cycle? Can anyone tell? Can anyone think of it? क्या बात है
Can you
आज?
repeat your question, please?
या पल्लवी, मैं पूछ रही हूँ कि लैंड यूज पैटर्न में चेंजेस होने की वजह से कैसे इसने वाटर साइकिल को अफेक्ट किया है, और हाउ द इफेक्ट इन द वाटर साइकिल हैज अफेक्टेड द क्वालिटी ऑफ द सॉइल, या वाटर साइकिल में वेरिएशंस होने से कैसे सॉइल क्वालिटी आपकी अफेक्ट हो सकती है?
हम लाइक अगर लैंड पैटर्न चेंज होगा, जस्ट लाइक फॉर एग्जांपल के लिए कि पहले जो लैंड होता था वो अधिकतर एग्रीकल्चर मतलब लाइक फॉरेस्ट एरियाज के लिए होता था, या फिर अब हम एग्रीकल्चर एरियाज के लिए उसको मतलब हम डेवलप कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि नेशन इज बेसिकली अगर हम कह रहे हैं कि जो बैकबोन होता है इज एग्रीकल्चर फॉर आवर नेशन लाइक इंडिया। तो मैम अगर हम जब एग्रीकल्चर को या प्रोडक्टिविटी को, क्योंकि मैम पॉपुलेशन बढ़ रही है तो उसके बाद पॉपुलेशन मतलब एक्सप्लोजन इतना काफी है कि उसके लिए एग्रीकल्चरल जो नीड्स है मतलब मैम सर्वाइवल के लिए जो उसको मीट करने के लिए एग्रीकल्चर जो बढ़ी है तो उससे मैम केमिकल यूज भी बढ़ रहा है। केमिकल यूज बढ़ रहा है तो वो कहीं ना कहीं हमारे जो है ग्राउंड वाटर लेवल को जो है हमारा उसको डिप्लीट कर रहा है मैम, कि लाइक टॉक्सिक जैसे हम कोई भी केमिकल्स यूज करते हैं, पेस्टिसाइड्स होते हैं या जो भी है मैम केमिकल्स मिनरल्स हम यूज करते हैं, तो उसकी वजह से कहीं ना कहीं जो ग्राउंड वाटर है वो डिप्लीट हो रहा है। और मैम इंडस्ट्रियल एरिया जैसे आपने बोला कि डेवलपमेंट इतनी ज्यादा हो जाती है कि लाइक अगर हमें शेल्टर्स मिल जाते हैं तो हम इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन काफी ज्यादा भी मतलब बढ़ रहा है। तो इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन बढ़ने की वजह से मैम जो केमिकल रिलीज होती है वो भी कहीं ना कहीं उनके आसपास के जो वाटर्स है, क्योंकि वो डायरेक्टली वो टॉक्सिक केमिकल्स को बिना ट्रीट किए लाइक मतलब मैम सस्टेनेबल वे में उसको डायरेक्ट वाटर में थ्रो कर देते हैं, जिसकी वजह से वो वाटर जो है वो डिप्लीट होता है, फिर ग्राउंड वाटर भी डिप्लीट होता है। तो मैम सॉइल जो वहाँ का आसपास का सॉइल है वो भी मतलब डिप्लीट होगा, न्यूट्रिशन लेवल घट जाएंगे मतलब, क्योंकि ये है क्योंकि मैम अदर जो है केमिकल कंपोजिशन अगर जो आएगा केमिकल कॉम्बिनेशन मतलब हम क्रिएट होंगे उसकी वजह से वो इफेक्ट हो जाएगा उसका
Okay, okay,
जो भी
okay,
रिक्वायरमेंट।
okay. Thank you, Pallavi. Thank you, Pallavi. Okay, so thank you, Pallavi. She actually tried in a good way. Okay, so let's understand the direct effect. Okay, now the soil serves as a huge bank and a reservoir for capturing water in terms of water moisture, and the and rest amount of water is percolates down to form the part of water table. Okay, now how these both the things are linked. Now, of course, when for the water vapors to, or for the water to again enter into the water cycle in form of water vapors, the maximum amount of water is obtained from the water bodies like oceans. Second, of course, ranks the forest, because trees, through the process of transpiration, are constantly releasing the water into the atmosphere. And third, of course, is this huge amount of soil bank, because they contain the water molecules. So they also form the part of the water vapors when the evaporation takes place. Okay, first thing. Second thing, now how this vice versa is affecting. Now, when the water cycle is affected, say for example, climate change is happening and it is disrupting the water cycle. Now, the soil won't receive that amount of rainfall which it should need for maintaining that amount of moisture in it. Okay, तो अभी वो वाटर साइकिल के डिसरप्ट होने से क्या होगा, पानी नहीं बरसेगा ढंग से, पानी नहीं बरसेगा, सो व्हाट विल हैपन इज द मॉइस्चर विल गो, जितना अमाउंट ऑफ वाटर चाहिए उस सॉइल को मॉइस्चर गेन करने के लिए, दैट वोंट बी देयर। फर्स्ट एंड सेकंड, ग्राउंड वाटर टेबल के लिए जो अमाउंट ऑफ वाटर अवेलेबल होना चाहिए रिचार्जिंग के लिए, दैट विल आल्सो बी नॉट देयर। ओके, now the major source for groundwater, always try to understand this, the major source for groundwater is the rainwater. And how this rainwater is forming part, when it goes and it percolates the soil, it goes down and then it becomes the a part of the water table. So that is also one of the reason why the groundwater is going down, because the catchment area and the watershed area is declining first. Second, the soil is losing its capacity to allow the water to percolate down. Third, because of the climatic changes, the water cycle has severely affected, as a result of which an ample amount and sufficient amount of rainfall that should happen in order to keep the soil drenched with the water molecule is not happening. Okay. So this is how it is also affecting the groundwater amount and groundwater quality, as well as the surface water quality. Okay. Now the question comes is how the deterioration or our changes in the land use pattern is affecting water pollution and air pollution. So as Pallavi has told that when we are using excess amount of fertilizer and chemical fertilizers, when the water runoff is happening, this chemical fertilizer will go in the nearby bodies, and it will cause the problem, which is also known as fill in the blank. Answers. The excess amount of fertilizers, chemical fertilizers, when are from which are used for agricultural purposes, when are going as an agricultural runoff into the nearby water body, it will create a problem in those water body. What is that? क्या होगा? What will happen when the chemical fertilizers, which are rich in phosphorus and nitrogen, they are getting swept with the huge water runoff or in the form of an agricultural runoff into the nearby water body? Yeah, no, it's fine. What is that specific type of water pollution? It's a water pollution. Exactly. Very right, Himani. It's eutrophication. This is only eutrophication. Okay. So we can see that how eutrophication is associated with the land pollution, because we are using these chemical fertilizers, and when they are getting runoff from the form of from the water in the form of an agricultural runoff in the nearby water bodies, this land pollution is going to create problem for the water pollution in the form of eutrophication and algal bloom, right? So similarly, when the land is filled by wastes, now these wastes in due course of time, as a result of decomposition, will release the toxins. These toxins will go down and it will form the part of the water table, where it is again going to affect the quality of the water, the groundwater table. Okay. Now this is also now this is how the land pollution is associated with water pollution. Now we will check how land pollution is associated with air pollution, because all these wastes, the mining activities, the construction activities, they are suspending the toxic gases, the dust particles, the mineral particles, etc. in the air, and they are forming the part of your air pollution. Okay. Now, as an indirect consequence of the decline in the land use pattern, the forest is not growing, or the forests are being cleared, or they are not having ample amount of land to grow or to expand themselves, as a result of which the habitat destruction is happening, with which the wildlife and the biodiversity loss is happening. Okay, and the third and the another most important factor that is happening with the land degradation is decline in the quality of the soil, which is one of the most major problems of today's time. Soil quality decline. Okay, so what is actually land degradation, or what means what does it implies when we say land is degrading? Okay, so of course the very first thing that comes into our head when we talk about degradation of land is in terms of its quality, in terms of its fertility, in the terms of its productive capacity. Okay, now when we say the productive capacity of the soil, now what is that? That is of course because of the minerals, that is the inorganic compound, the microorganisms, those are the organic compound which will add the organic compounds in the soil, which will add humus in the soil, and third is of course water. So these three are the main thing or main factors which will maintain the which are required, or which is what is meant when we say fertility of the soil. The inorganic and the organic composition of the soil should be good, and third, the water capacity or the water availability in the soil should be balanced. Okay, so now what are the reasons for the decline in this fertility or the productivity? So this is of course the first responsible factor, or the important factor is soil erosion. Okay, Then of course the pollution, what and why this pollution is happening because of the dumping of the excess amount of waste and by excessive use of fertilizers and chemical pesticides, etc. Okay, then we'll talk about what the salination and water logging, the and some faulty practices like shifting cultivation and urbanization and desertification also. Okay, so we will take them one by one. Now let's talk about soil erosion. Now we all have been studying it from our childhood days and from our elementary and higher schools that erosion is what? It's the removal of the top layer. And why the top layer removal is a matter of query, because this top layer is composed of minerals. Okay, so the removal of minerals from this soil implies that the quality of the soil is declined, okay, or has gone. Okay, the productive capacity of the soil is gone because most of the minerals, especially your most of the minerals, whether they are organic and inorganic, they are all present in the top layer of the soil. Okay. Now, what are the factors that will affect the soil erosion? Okay. So we have to first think, why will soil get eroded, or what is happening in erosion? The soil particles are actually getting lifted from their original position. This simply implies that there is no factor which should act as a fevicol to bind them, to keep them adhere. Okay. And what is that natural fevicol for the soil? These are two. One, the roots of the plants, and second, the moisture. Okay. So these two are the important factors that will keep which will act as an adhesive, which will act as a fevicol for the soil particles to stay where they are. Okay. Now, because of the erratic rainfall, because of the climate change, because of the overuse of water, moisture content of the soil has declined. So one fevicol agent has gone. Second, because of excessive deforestation, overgrazing implies that the grass cover is gone. Okay. Now, with that, what is happening is the second most important fevicol agent is also gone. अभी soil एकदम freely available है, उसको जितना erode करना चाहो करो erode. ठीक है, so that is what is happening here. So those are all the factors that are responsible for the soil erosion. Then there are other topographic factors also. For example, the slope of the soil and the nature of the soil. Now, of course, the clay soil, because their particles are very sticky, so they adhere to each other strongly, and therefore it is difficult for the agencies like the natural agencies like water and wind to lift them up. Okay. But in case of a sandy soil where the particles are very fine, it's very simple for them to be lifted by these agencies, and therefore those soil are more prone to erosion. Okay. Now, slope is then another important factor, especially it's quite understandable because the action of gravity is good there in case of slopy regions, and therefore, especially this factor is important in the mountain region where the slope is there, and again when there is no vegetation or because of the deforestation or the moisture content of the soil is low, the soil is easy to prone to get eroded. And that is why in the monsoon seasons, we now hear it as a normal news that this landslide has happened, that landslide has happened, huge amount of the landmass has fallen into a river as a result of which the flooding has happened. So all these things are actually happening here, okay? And of course, as I already told, that faulty practices like overgrazing, wrong ways of cultivation like shifting cultivation, we will study about it, and then forest fires because the vegetation is getting lost in this process. So all these activities are responsible for eroding the soil. Okay. Anyone has any questions so far? Okay. Okay. So now, of course, what are the harmful effects of soil erosion? Now, soil fertility. Now, interestingly, both the factors are interrelated. Now, loss in soil fertility is responsible for soil erosion, and soil erosion is responsible for soil fertility, loss in soil fertility. How? Now, when the soil fertility is lost, what does it mean? It means that the soil is no more viable to support any vegetation growth. अभी जब vegetation growth नहीं होएगा, तो roots नहीं रहेंगी, तो again the soil is lost, is loose, so it is prone to soil erosion. अब soil जब erode होगा, more and more top layer will remove. That will worsen the impact of the fertility of the soil. So these two are supporting each other. ठीक है, एक दूसरे को और खराब बनाने में एक दूसरे का सपोर्ट कर रहे हैं. ठीक है. So the question comes how this has to means where this circle can be broken or where this circle can be disrupted. Okay. So this can be done erode होने से बचा सकें. ठीक है. और वो हम कैसे कर सकते हैं, तब जब हम सॉइल को इतना एटलीस्ट इतना फर्टाइल बना दें ताकि वो एटलीस्ट कुछ वेजिटेशन तो सपोर्ट कर सके. तो उसको कैसे फर्टाइल बनाए. ठीक, बाय फर्स्ट एडिंग दी वाटर टू इट. क्योंकि कुछ वेजिटेशन ऐसे होते हैं जिसमें कि अगर मिनिमल मिनरल सप्लाई भी अगर है, then also it can grow if the water is there. Water is the prime necessity for the soil, for any vegetation to grow. एक बार वेजिटेशन ने ग्रो करना शुरू किया, छोटा छोटा वेजिटेशन ही सही, सॉइल को बाइंड करने की कोशिश करेगी. आफ्टर अ पीरियड ऑफ टाइम all the minerals and nutrients that are lost, because now the top layer will stay there. So with period of time, those minerals will again come back and it will get replenished in the soil. So in this way only the soil can be broken. Okay. So even in case in the places where the soil was completely infertile, वहां पर पहले या फिर soil जो erosion के लिए बहुत prone थी, तो वहां पर ऐसे ही किया गया that they had taken a patch of land, they added the nutrients in form of an artificial forms, not the chemical fertilizer again, in form of manures, in form of certain solutions that can add minerals to it. और उसके साथ साथ उन्होंने पानी दिया उस रीजन को. बहुत लंबे समय तक सिर्फ वो इसी प्रोसेस को करते रहे. एक पॉइंट ऐसा आता है where of course the soil will catch the train and it will enter into the cycle. क्योंकि एक भाई ये मिनरल्स को लाने का काम कौन करेगा, डिकम्पोजिशन प्रोसेस करेगा, उसके लिए माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिजम्स चाहिए. अभी माइक्रो ऑर्गेनिजम्स भी तब आएंगे सॉइल में जब उन्हें कुछ मिलेगा. ओके, तो एक बार सॉइल को वो जरूरत रिक्वायरमेंट्स मिल जाएंगी, ऑटोमेटिकली द सॉइल विल अगेन come back into that cycle where it will replenish the nutrient, where it will grow it will start maintaining the fertility by its own, and then it will start supporting the vegetation, which in turn will prevent the soil erosion. So we can see that how these all factors are interconnected with each other. एक बार सॉइल में रूट्स आने के बाद में और माइक्रोबियल एक्टिविटीज के ग्रो होने के बाद और ऑर्गेनिक कंपोनेंट्स के आने के बाद में सॉइल का वाटर होल्डिंग कैपेसिटी विल आल्सो इंक्रीज. तो उससे क्या होगा, सॉइल का मॉइस्चर लंबे समय तक बना रहेगा. And when the rainfall is happening, the roots will create that suction pressure in the soil with which the soil will allow the water to seep down and percolate, where it will become the part of the soil moisture content, as well as it will allow the refilling or the recharge of the groundwater table. Okay, so we can see that how these processes are interconnected with each other. So when the change had happened, it is not that change is happening only with that at that place. Okay, we'll see and we'll find that change is actually linked to several other changes in several other resources. Okay, and these all are interconnected. There is no clear boundary कि यहाँ से कहेंगे okay this is air pollution, this is water pollution. No, they all share the boundaries, they all have overlapping zones. Okay. So what are the soil conservation practices? We will discuss them in the next class. And I'll show you the images so that from there you will have a clear picture on what is actually contour farming, what is terracing, what is allied cropping and forestry, what are windbreaks and so on. Okay, so from those figures it will be easier for you to differentiate between these practices. Okay, so sometimes in your exams they ask the question that जैसे मैंने पहले भी बताया कि they won't be asking you directly, they will give you some examples, or they will pose you some situation. They will ask you to imagine some situations. Say for example they will say that you are a farmer, or they will say that you are a resident of certain area and we are seeing that the nearby region or a patch of land is losing its fertility. Okay, so in that case what are the steps and the measurements that you will take to make it or to conserve it or to return or to bring so by which the soil is able to bring back its productivity. What are you going to do? So there you have to write about all these conservation practices and techniques, including the awareness and how you will make people to participate in those activities. Okay, and maybe you can take some case studies in that where there are several stories where people have utilized the completely barren land, and they have changed it into a completely fertile land for producing fruits, variety of fruits, and variety of the agricultural products, and so on. Okay. So anyone has any doubts so far in the class, and so far in this lecture? Anyone? Or anyone wish to share something? Okay, so I think I'll take your attendance, and then you are free to go for your next class.